Hello friends, welcome to my channel Learning Now Simple, and today I have come to you with a brand new video on a very interesting topic in Indian history, that is the Mughal Empire. So, firstly, I'd like to tell you before we start on with the introduction to Mughal Empire, I'd like to tell you that most of the students who are watching this video would be very much aware that since it's a chapter in history, it's one with lots of importance. And another thing is that it's a little difficult to remember because there are a lot of important events that took place, and of course, remembering the dates is also a very big task. So, here's my advice to you before starting. There are a lot of kings in the Mughal Empire. Try to cover them one by one daily. You can use some tricks for remembering the names of the kings and all. Use your own methods. You can use acronyms, mnemonics. It's all up to you, and you can easily remember the chapter. So just go one king per day, and then the next day you revise about that king, and just fix a period of revision so that you don't forget the chapter. So there won't be any problem if you're writing an exam, then there won't be any problem of remembering the dates or remembering the places. So let's get started. So, firstly, I'd like to introduce you to the Mughal Empire and tell you some short and easy to remember facts about the Mughal Empire. So, let's start with from the beginning, that is the foundation of the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire was founded in 1526 by Babur, who was the first Mughal emperor. So the beginning of the Mughal Empire marked the end of the Delhi Sultanate. Most of you who will be watching this would be knowing about the Delhi Sultanate. Those who don't know, the Delhi Sultanate comprised of five different dynasties: the Mamluk or the slave dynasty, the Khilji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty, and the Sayyid and Lodi dynasty. The Lodi dynasty being the last was had ended in 1526 with the death of Ibrahim Lodi. We'll come to know more about that later in the video. So, and the Mughal Empire was one of the strongest empires to have existed in India. And as you can see in the fifth point, it is written, it covered nearly the entire Indian subcontinent. By the time Aurangzeb came to the throne, and after a few years into his rule, nearly the entire Indian subcontinent. Indian subcontinent. Please make sure that it is not India. It is Indian subcontinent because there are places surrounding modern day India also that came into the Mughal territory. For example, some regions in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and also other places surrounding it. It is not just India. Always make sure that you mention it as the Indian subcontinent. Okay. So the first emperor of the Mughal Empire, as I had earlier mentioned, was Babur, and the last one was Bahadur Shah Zafar. Let's go through it again. First one was Babur, last one was Bahadur Shah Zafar. These two you always have to remember. You should never forget them. Later on, also as you study higher, it will be very important. You should never forget these two. Okay. So what did we do right now? Founded in 1526 by whom? By Babur. And who was the last emperor? Bahadur Shah Zafar. Strongest empires to have existed, covering nearly the entire Indian subcontinent. Okay, now let's go forward with some additional facts. These are not necessary, but it's good if you can know about these facts. So, firstly, is the Mughals have left an impact on various sectors. For example, they were very much they, in the sense, particularly the third emperor Akbar, was very well known for his principles on secularism. So he has also left a lot of impact. Whatever his ideologies have actually left an impact on today's life also. Because when I in my later videos on Akbar, you'll come to know on how he had ideologies about secularism and stuff. And other than that, also they have affected many other sectors such as their food. Today, also Mughlai cuisine is very very popular. Then architecture. This is something very important. Most of you will already be aware that under Shah Jahan, who was the fifth Mughal emperor, under his rule, there were a very, very beautiful and well known monument called the Taj Mahal was constructed, and today Taj Mahal is one of the seven wonders of the world. So the Mughal architecture is very, very popular. And if you observe their architecture, you will always see that they have them all their monuments are generally built on a raised platform, and they are generally surrounded by gardens. Okay, now let's come to the next point. The Mughal Empire is also called as the Gunpowder Empire because they are very much credited with the usage of gunpowder. You can do a little more research on that if you're interested, on gunpowder and how they used it. If you want to research on it, then you have to go more in detail on the wars and stuff during the Mughal period. Then Shah Jahan's rule is famously known as the golden age of Mughal Empire. Uh, Not just due to the reasons of the peace and how the empire flourished during that time. It's not just that. It is also because of the architecture. As I already mentioned before, one very famous monument he built was Taj Mahal. There are a lot of other monuments also. One example is the Jama Masjid. So yes, so Shah Jahan's rule, it is always, it's very famously known as the golden age of Mughal Empire, and it is also known as the golden age of Mughal architecture. Okay. Then there are a lot of beautiful stories associated with it. This is not something that will be tested for your exams, I'm sure. But if you're interested in knowing a lot about the history, you can dive in and go and search a lot about this. So I'll tell you two examples. One is maybe most of you might have heard about the story of Anarkali. It's a very commonly known story, but no, not everything is true. We don't know if it is completely true. So if you are interested, you can go and learn more about it, research more about it, and do tell us if you get to know a lot of interesting facts. And another is the story of Rani Karnavati and Humayun. It's also a very beautiful story, which is also very much related to Raksha Bandhan, a very popular festival in India. So you can go and research on these beautiful stories if you're interested. Then it was an this is a point that was stated before, but I have to repeat it again. And that point is that it was an extremely prosperous empire, especially under the rule of the early Mughals. The early Mughals, later Mughals, you'll come to know as we move forward in this video. And how it declined was with the coming of the British. The British resulted in the declining of the Mughal Empire. It started during Jahangir's time. Jahangir was the fourth emperor. It started during Jahangir's time when he let Sir Thomas Roe, who visited him in 1615, he permitted the British to set up a factory at Surat, and that is where it all began. It started out as a trade, then most of you might be aware, some of you might not. So for all those who know, you might be aware how it expanded, how the British very quickly using their skills, especially their tactics and strategies for negotiations with the governors and people in the army. They were very easily able to capture a lot of territories in a very short span of time. So, and as we already know, Mughals were one of the strongest emperors who existed during that time, but they were very easily defeated during the time of the later Mughals because of their inefficient rule. So we'll know a lot more in my later videos. Okay, so it ended about in the 18th century after the revolt of 1857. We already came to know that Bahadur Shah Zafar was the last emperor. So he took part in the revolt of 1857, and but then the revolt was a huge failure because even after the combined efforts of everyone during 1857, they all revolted at different times. So it wasn't much of a success. So Bahadur Shah Zafar tried to play his part, but then he was already very old during that time and he couldn't play much of a part. So then what happened? He had two sons. They were killed right in front of him, so there was no heir left. And he was sent off to Myanmar, and that was the end of the Mughal Empire. So that will go on like that. Those were some quick facts. Now let us know about the Mughal emperors. I had stated this word, the early Mughals, right in this video just a few minutes back. So you might be thinking, what is this early Mughals, later Mughals? So the Mughal emperors were generally classified as the early Mughals and the later Mughals. And this was based on their efficiency and how the empire flourished during their rule. So, as you can see in the slide, Babur, his son Humayun, and his descendants Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, Aurangzeb. These were the six kings who came under the category of the early Mughals. Why? Why do we say so? That is because these emperors were extremely powerful, and it was under their rule that the empire flourished as never before. It became very, very strong. The Mughals were nearly, it was very difficult to defeat them during that time. Only the bravest even tried to go against them. So it was, they had carved out a very strong name for themselves in that period of time in ancient India. Then what happened after Aurangzeb? You can see the last name is of Emperor Aurangzeb. After Aurangzeb came the later Mughals. Aurangzeb's descendants were the later Mughals. Still Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah Zafar was also a part of the later Mughals. So why we call them later Mughals was because they weren't as efficient and as skilled as their ancestors or their predecessors. There were a lot of feuds. There were a lot of feuds by the time of Aurangzeb's rule also. The problem was that when by the time Aurangzeb left the throne, he had formed a lot of problems with different groups of people like the Sikhs and the Rajputs. That is because they were all ready to rebel against him. That was because he was a person who was very God fearing, and he believed in his religion, and he was not very much into secularism. So that actually caused a lot of other groups to unite against him. So this became a problem, and this was a problem that also contributed to the weakening of the Mughals. And another factor was the descendants of Aurangzeb themselves were fighting for power. They were all completely divided, and that is how. And they were not very efficient. They allowed. There was another descendant called Farooq Shiar. He allowed himself to be guided and act as a puppet. So they were not very efficient. They weren't very smart, and they weren't very skilled in controlling the territory. So that is how it easily fell apart, and that is why the later Mughals aren't very well credited. Now we will look into the first Mughal emperor in this video, and he was Babur. Babur was the first Mughal emperor who established the Mughal Empire, and his real name, as you can see on the slide, was Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. What's his name? Let's repeat: Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. And to which category did he belong? He belonged to the early Mughals. Okay, you can just go back to the slide once. I'll just show the slide once again for you all. Just try to remember the names of the early Mughals. Okay, Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. These names should always be in your mind. They should be intact. You should never forget these names because these are the really important emperors and you shouldn't forget them. Okay. So coming back to Babur, his real name was what? What was his real name? Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. Okay. Now let's know a little more on his life and how it all began. Babur ascended the throne of Farghana, a small state in Transylvania. I know it's a big word to pronounce, but you've got to learn it. Transylvania in 1494. So he ascended the throne at a very young age, and it wasn't completely a bed of flowers for him. It wasn't very easy to come to his position to lay the foundation of the Mughal Empire. He went through a lot of struggles. So Babur was descended from the great Taimur on his paternal side. So Taimur was a very famous Mongol. All those who recall, you might have heard this name while learning about the Delhi Sultanate. Taimur actually invaded during the rule of the Tughlaq dynasty, and he carried back so much wealth with him. It actually delivered a huge blow to the Tughlaq dynasty, and that is how the Tughlaq dynasty came to an end. And on the maternal side also, a very very powerful ruler, another very powerful Mongol, the founder of the Mongolian dynasty, that is Genghis Khan. The spellings may differ. Please refer to the material you are using. Babur's father was bent on capturing Samarkand, and Babur also followed his footsteps, but it didn't exactly, help him take control in a manner that he intended. He tried various there were a lot of vain attempts made by him to capture Samarkand, but he was very badly defeated. He actually got control of it twice, but it was for a very short period of time, and he was immediately thwarted. This was mainly because the ruler who was in front of him, with whom he had to battle, was Muhammad Shaibani Khan. Try to recall that again. We'll go through it again. Muhammad Shaibani Khan. He was a very powerful Uzbek ruler, and for nearly 10 years he struggled against this ruler, and he wasn't able to make much of a difference. Eventually, what happened was that he lost Samarkand. He was never able to gain it, and the position he had in Fargana was also lost. He wasn't, things weren't looking good during that time. So let's go through what all points we did. From whom was he ascended? Firstly, from Taimur on the paternal side and Genghis Khan on the maternal side. This you have to remember. When did he ascend the throne? In 1494. And the throne to where? Fargana in Transoxiana. So he tried to capture a certain place by following his father's footsteps. And which was this place? It was Samarkand. As I ask these questions, try to form an answer in your mind. Just try to recollect the points so that you'll be able to remember it faster. Okay. And who was the powerful Uzbek ruler who gave a stiff resistance to Babur? It was Muhammad Shaibani Khan. Let's proceed. So there were a lot of failed attempts, and then what happened? What do you think happened next? Did he just give up? Did he go back? No. He moved on. He tried to change his perspective towards another side. He decided to look towards another territory. He decided that, okay, maybe it's going to go a little difficult right here. I'll go somewhere else and try. So that is how he went to Kabul in 1504. So when did he ascend the throne? In 1494. And when did he capture Kabul? In 1504. 10 years difference. You have to remember the dates so you can use the time span also for remembering the dates. Now, when he came to Kabul, he was very much fascinated by the stories of wealth of which place? Of India. And that's how he decided to turn his attention towards India. So he planned an expedition towards India with the intention of capturing Punjab, Delhi, and the Gangetic Valley. Now comes the main part. So in the last slide, we saw that he turned his attention towards India and he planned an expedition towards India. So he came and he made many raids in the region he desired, but it wasn't enough. He was able to get something little here and there, but he wasn't exactly able to master enough to secure a strong foothold. Then but he didn't give up. He continued trying, and he was waiting for an opportunity. And when did the opportunity come? It came in 1524 when Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, invited him to attack the region since he resented Ibrahim Lodi. So now remember, don't forget that right now the rule of the Lodis is going on, and the emperor who is ruling currently is Ibrahim Lodi. So what happened during that time? It was during Ibrahim Lodi's rule. Not many people were very fond of the way he was ruling. Now Daulat Khan Lodi was one of them. He was a governor of Punjab, but he desired that Ibrahim Lodi should be thwarted. He thought that it is how everything worked during that time. If you resent someone, you go and form you go and become an ally of a person who would help you to thwart the other person. But the thing was that you wouldn't get anything like that. Still, you just feel happy because the other person got thwarted. That was the mindset of nearly all the people who hadn't completely come to power. They all thought that they'll get something in return from it, but they never got anything in return. So Daulat Khan Lodi was the governor of Punjab, and he gave this golden opportunity to Babur, and Babur didn't let go of it. So his forces met that of Ibrahim Lodi on 21st April 1526 at the battleground of Panipat, and together they fought the Battle of Panipat. So this is a very important historic moment, a very important war that you all have to remember. So during there were actually three wars of Panipat. One was fought by Babur, and the later two you will come to know about it later on in the videos. So why it is not called as the Battle of Panipat is wholly and solely because of the region where it was fought, which was named Panipat. So in this battle, Ibrahim Lodi was killed. It is believed that Ibrahim Lodi had the larger army, but because of Babur's excellent tactics and his skills, he was easily able to thwart him. So after Ibrahim Lodi's defeat, Babur became the master of central India, that is Delhi, and that is how the Mughal Empire got established. Why Babur won was because of his tactics, military strategies, and excellent ideas. His ways to he exactly knew how to control things. There lied his strength. So, and another advantage he had was his opponents were completely divided. That was the main problem. That is how, all the great empires fell very easily because they were all divided. They were all brothers and sisters, and they were all related somehow, not just brothers and sisters, even the people who worked under the ruling class, like the people who led the army, and yeah, all the people who worked with the ruling class, like the ministers also. They all desired that they should come to power, and it was everyone wanted power. But because of this division inside within one's territory itself, that is how they all failed. All the big empires all came to a close like that only. They all ended because of this division. And this is the same way how Babur took advantage of this. He saw that the members of the opponents were completely divided. So it was very easy for him to defeat them. He was very easily able to see where they were weak, and there itself he attacked. And after that, that is how the Mughal Empire got established. And then on, from there onwards, it just went on expanding. So 5 points, we'll remember them again. Firstly, he came, he made many raids. Uh, before this, you have to remember 1504. You can't forget that Kabul, just like that. 1504, he heard about Kabul, and that is how he came to India. So during that time, who was ruling? Form the answers in your mind. During that time, who was ruling? The Lodhis, the Lodhi dynasty of what time period? The Delhi Sultanate. Okay. So he made many raids, but they were not very successful. Now, when did he get his golden opportunity? In 1524. And how was it? It was offered to him by the governor of Punjab, who agreed to provide him support in overthrowing Ibrahim Lodi. Daulat Khan Lodi was the governor of Punjab. Okay. Now, how did they fight the battle? The battle was, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi in the first battle of Panipat. And e- uh, where did this take place? In the battleground of Panipat. After this, what happened? What happened? Two things happened. Ibrahim Lodi died. That marked the end of the Lodi dynasty. And what happened to Babur? He became the master of central India, and that is how the Mughal Empire was established. Why he won? Look at arrow 4. It was because of his tactics and military strategies. Don't try to mug this up. Just try to remember it in a sequence. Think of it as a story and try to remember it as a sequence. All you need to actually, remember with all your effort is the dates, nothing else. And the dates and the places, that's all. Rest all, just try to remember it as a story. Now, after that, what happened? Okay, he got the territory well and good. Okay, so before we move on, this is an important date you have to remember. The first battle of Panipat. When was it fought? 21st April 1526. You shouldn't forget this as a very important date. So after the Battle of Panipat, what happened? Did it just end there? We're going to find out. But before that, We'll just look at what happened before. We recall those 5 points, but let's just take um, a quick time. Just take a look at this timeline so that we can remember the points quickly before we proceed, or we'll forget those points by the time we proceed. Okay, 1494, Babur ascends the throne. To which place? To Fargana. Okay, then 10 years later, 1504. During this 10-year span, what he tried? He tried to he tried to establish his territory at a certain place. Which place was that? Samarkand. Okay, so now there was yes. Now, which emperor did he try to thwart? But that emperor was very strong. We heard about that emperor a few minutes back. That emperor was very strong. He was not able to overthrow him. And who was that emperor? Muhammad Shaibani Khan. Okay. Now, after this, 1504, what happened? He established a territory at Kabul. He went away from Samarkand, came to Kabul, and established a territory over there. How did he come to India? By listening to this, by listening to the stories of India, and in 1524 he got his golden opportunity. 1524 means exactly 20 years later. Well, there's a 10-year difference here, and there's a 20-year difference here. Okay, and whom was he invited by? Daulat Khan Lodi. 1526 there was the first battle of Panipat, and the first battle of Panipat was the milestone that marked the beginning of the Mughal Empire. Now we can proceed. So this was a question I already asked you, but let's go back to it again. Was that it? After the Battle of Panipat, did everything end? No, he didn't stop there. He went on. There were few more battles before his death. He actually died very quickly. In 1530, he died. He died very quickly. If he would have lived long, I'm sure he might have gone on to uh, establish a very powerful empire in a very short span of time. Because now these points, by looking at these points, you will come to know that before those within that 4 years before his death itself, he was able to establish a very strong foothold. So immediately after the Battle of Panipat came a resistance from Rana Sangha, a Rajput from Mewar. So Rana Sanga saw him as a threat. He thought that like his predecessor and uh, his ancestor Taimur, he would go back. Like after he thought it would just be an invade, he would capture all the wealth from there and he'd go back. That is exactly what Taimur did. He came, he invaded, but then he didn't stay there. He just took back all the wealth and he went. That's the same thing. If you see, the Delhi Sultanate was also established like that. The Muhammad Ghori came and established a foothold there, but he didn't stay there. He went back to Afghanistan. He went. He turned his attention towards other territories. So he didn't exactly stay there. He only took the wealth from there and he went back. And in place, he didn't lose that territory. That territory still bore his name. So he didn't exactly give it away. He took the wealth, yes, but he left Kutubuddin Aibak over there, and that marked the beginning of the Delhi Sultanate. So that's the same thing that happened with Temur. Rana Sanga thought, okay, he'll invade the place and he'll go back, but Babur didn't go back. He decided that I will build an empire over here. So Rana Sanga saw this as a threat, and he decided to show his resistance. So Rana Sangha of Mewar, with the combined forces of the chieftains in and around Delhi, fought against Babur in the Battle of Khanwa in 1527. 1526 we had the first Battle of Panipat. 1527 we have the Battle of Khanwa. Okay, so but then again we already it's the same thing that happens here also. Rana Sangha was also he fought very bravely. He was a valiant soldier, a very strong warrior, but then again he was very easily defeated by Babur, because it's because of the same advantage that Babur had. That is his excellent mind. He was very strong. He was very good at planning things. That is how he won all his battles. So Rana Sangha was defeated in the battle. Then what happens? There was a small place called Chanderi, which was believed to have been a place that was under Taimur's control. So he decided that he wanted that place. Babur thought that, okay, I want that place. So he went there, and the person who was ruling there was a lieutenant of Rana Sanga, was Medini Rao. So he was the ruler of Malwa. So he went there and he decided to battle against him. But then, when he saw that things were not looking very good for him, he said that, okay, you surrender Chanderi and we will give you Shamsabad as a reward. You can stay there, but we will get the main control. But then Medini Rao was one of the staunchest supporters of Rana Sanga. He knew that if Rana Sanga were alive, he wouldn't have wanted that. He would have fought till his last breath, and that's exactly what Medini Rao did. He refused the offer, and he decided to battle. So January 20, 1528, that is after the Battle of Khanwa, they fought the Battle of Chanderi, and this place was also easily won by Babur. Next comes in 1529. See, it's all consecutive. In consecutive years, all the important wars are taking place. The Battle of Ghagra was the last battle that Babur actually fought in India. So in 1529, he fought the Battle of Ghagra. And here, what happens? Remember who fought against Babur in the first Battle of Panipat? It was Ibrahim Lodi. Now, after Ibrahim Lodi's death, what happens is that his brother comes, his brother Mahmud Lodi. He comes and he says that he claims himself to be the ruler. So what happened? And he himself to be the ruler. So, but then when he also provided a lot of assistance to Rana Sanga, but then Babur won easily. So he also tried to make an individual attempt with the help with the joint forces of the Afghans. He led the Afghans and the Sultan of Bengal together. They fought at the banks of the river Ghagra. They fought the Battle of Ghagra, but here also he was easily defeated by Babur. So 1526 we have the Battle of Panipat, 1527 Battle of Khanwa against Rana Sanga and the chieftains in and around Delhi, 1528 the Battle of Chanderi against Medini Rao, and 1529 the Battle of Ghagra against Mahmud Lodi. Now let's go away from the wars and look into something else. You can see on the screen the Babar-Nama. So what is this, the Babar-Nama? It is actually sort of a diary which Babur maintained himself. It was a record book. Its actual name was Tuzuke Babari, and it was a record book where he wrote about himself, about how he established the Mughal Empire, all his struggles, about his life, everything in general. Babur died on 26 December 1530, which was very young for him actually. So 1526 he established, and within 4 years he passed away. Now some three important facts, additional facts, but it's important to remember. Babur was a military strategist, a stern disciplinarian, and an excellent administrator. You don't have to remember the words, remember these words, the sentence word to word. You just have to keep a picture in mind. He was very much into arts, and he himself was very well versed in Turkish literature, and he wrote many poems. He was also credited with the usage of gunpowder. Gunpowder was something that was used by all the Mughals. And if you see in the first few points where I introduced you to the Mughal Empire, I also stated that the Mughal Empire was called as the Gunpowder Empire, and this is because of this reason. Now, here's a task for you, for all those who are interested. You can find out some more on the monuments built by Babur. There are one monument built by him was had resulted in a very controversial topic, and yes, most of you would be knowing about it. So if you find out some information, please do post it in the comments below. You can also find more on the battles fought by Babur, on these four battles we discussed, and maybe even some of the battles he fought before that, which were not in India, and you can send it to the mail mentioned here. So that's all, my friends. Thank you. This was Learning Now Simple's video, and I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Hope you gained a lot from this video, and make sure that so you don't forget whatever concepts you learned right now. So keep revising in between so that doesn't slip out of your mind. So thank you for watching this video. Hope you got some valuable lessons from today's video. Thank you, and keep watching Learning Now Simple.